If you want to fill your keyboard, you go with something like foam sheets, or even something like butyl rubber. Or you mutilate your teddy bear for its innards. But what the heck is this? Welcome back to the channel, guys. This is Scott K. I've probably stuffed way too many keyboards with random things over the years. But this is the first time I've seen any keyboard company actually do something like this. Instead of using full-on sheets of foam or other mediums, they just use these tiny little Poron rings instead, 6 to be exact, as strategic places in the case. I can see what they're trying to achieve. Instead of dampening the entire keyboard, it targets specific areas to reduce the structure-borne sound transfer at these locations. Well, does it work? That's what we're going to try to figure out today. So the keyboard in question today is the Frost TKL by Keypport. If you recall, the last time I took a look at a Keypport keyboard was the Flash 60, the heaviest keyboard I've tested, named after Asuna from Sword Art Online. Similar to the Flash 60, the Frost TKL is a top-mounted keyboard. In a sea of gasket-mounted keyboards these days, these are more of a rarity. But Keyboard does a pretty good job of designing them, so it's not much of a handicap. And also similar to the Flash 60, the Frost is based on an anime character, this time Emilia from Re:Zero. Here is another similarity. When you open up the box of the Frost, this is all you get: a PCB, a plate, and a case. There's nothing else that comes with it. Very simple, like the Flash 60 was also. But the interesting thing about this keyboard is this, the Poron rings. We'll cover this a little bit later during the build. Let's take a look at the plate first. Perhaps this is because it's a prototype, but the anodization on the aluminum plate was blue. Nothing wrong with the color blue, but it really clashes with the case color. So I hope for the production they match the plate color to the case, or just make it like a neutral color, like silver or something. Now the PCB, yes, it's green, and a very standard, basic looking PCB. No flex cuts, no RGB, no nothing special here. The version I have is also solder, so it doesn't even have the hot swap sockets either. This is pretty much the most basic you can get from a PCB overall. However, since this version is solderable, it has a lot of different configurations you could go after, which is a plus. Now, let's go to the highlight of the keyboard, the case. The case color I received was in this beautiful lavender. So this color actually matches the anime character very well. I believe Emilia's key colors are like lavender and white. The little badging accent is also a nice touch, although it does take away one of the keys, specifically the pause key, but I don't think I've ever used that before. Similar to the Flash before, the Frost also has a lot of interesting aesthetic details. The rear of the case flares out like some kind of a spaceship, or like an anime character in motion. The side profile is stunning in my opinion as well. The version I received is a winkeyless, which means it has blockers on both sides over where the window key is. But this also promotes symmetry, which I do like. Underneath the case is a gray steel weight, which adds quite the heft to the board. There's a nice little Keyport logo right in the center as well, so it's a nice detail. Now the bad. I know that this is a prototype, but the ano work on this lavender was pretty bad. I noticed a lot of striping and banding at random places of the case, so I hope for the production this gets fixed. I'm sure it will, right? The most interesting detail of the case, these little nubs, they kind of look like little lug nuts, but these are where the little Poron rings actually go. I'll show you that later. Before we go into the build itself, let's go to a quick word from our sponsor, PCBWay. PCBWay is an online service that helps you print PCBs, do 3D printing, or even CNC machining. If you're an aspiring keyboard designer or whatever else designer, you can take your design and simply upload it to get something made quick. Or, if you have the source code for a PCB that you already have and you need a replacement, you can also get that done as well. They can handle all types of PCBs from your simple single-layer designs to multi-layer stacks. Beyond PCBs, if you want to try making your own case, PCBWay can machine that as well. Now, a very exciting new service that PCBWay offers, OEM. Instead of just making a single component, you can actually task PCBWay to be an OEM manufacturer and make the whole thing. They can do anything from PCBs to CNC cases to even assembly. And using global manufacturing, they can offer very competitive prices. Is there a keyboard on the horizon? Well, check out OEM at PCBWay. Since the main objective of this video was to see whether or not these Poron rings actually worked, I'm going to build this thing with and without to show you the differences. Since this keyboard doesn't really have any other fillers, that is pretty much the only variable here. For the build, I will be using some nice brown switches. No, for real. These are not just standard browns, these are actually the Gateron Cap Browns if you recall. They have a nice sound to them, much nicer than the standard ones, and I feel they're much smoother than the standard one as well. So I soldered them all in like this right here, and for stabilizers, I'm using some lubed Owlstabs. Since this is a top mount keyboard, you just kind of drop the whole PCB plate assembly into the upper case, then screw it all down. Then the entire thing just drops into the lower case like this. Do you see what I'm talking about though? That blue plate, it just looks so oddball with this lavender case. Not very pleasing overall, but you know what? The good thing is that the keycaps kind of hide it, right? An interesting thing about the Frost is that the cable for the daughter board needs to be fed through the lower case like this. So make sure to do this step last, otherwise the assembly, I don't think it's actually possible. Here is the assembled look. Yeah, I know, it's like a color overload, but not in a good way. But with keycaps, bam, everything changes. These are the DCX Violacs. I always thought, when would I ever use these Violacs? Then the Frost came along and it's like a perfect match. Now with the keycaps on, the Frost really comes alive and the overall package is just beautiful. Let me know what you think about this color combination in the comments below. So let's take this baby for a quick typing test, shall we? Honestly, after typing on this like this, I was wondering, why do you even need those Poron rings in the first place? I think this sounds perfectly fine without anything. There's no ping, not much hollowness either, maybe just slightly over the mods. But the highlight was actually that spacebar. Man, that spacebar, it sounded so good. But I'm sure you guys are all waiting for this portion, right? The Poron rings, what the heck does the Poron rings do? Alright, so I put the rings where they need to go, over these little nug nuts. Then I assembled the whole entire case all together again, and now let's check it out. So what do you think? Overall, I don't hear that huge of a difference honestly, but I do notice that some of the reverberations over the larger modifiers did get better. So perhaps that was the intention? Keep the overall sound of the keyboard the same, but improve just the small reverbs around strategic areas. If that's the case, this is pretty cool. This means that in the future, if I notice the keyboard exhibiting weird noises in only certain areas of the case, I'll implement something like this instead of the whole sheet, right? Because that's what happens with the whole sheet, is that it kind of dampens the whole thing, kind of kills the sound. This way I can keep the sound alive without reducing the flex also, and still fix the noise at the same time without fixing something that's not broken. One more thing, yes, this is a top mount keyboard, but when top mounts are done right, you can still get a nice little flex out of them, so something to keep in mind. So given all this, I think the Frost TKL is an interesting board. Given where the keyboards have come to these days, this is like a dinosaur compared to them, right? However, it's a cool dinosaur. It keeps true to its classic roots with the top mounting and the green PCB, but it's they dial that in well just to make it work really well. And instead of stuffing the case with foam like most keyboards are these days, Keypport got creative with those little rings to solve one issue without causing any more other issues. Hey, I'm always a fan of innovation, and for that, the Frost is alright in my book. Not the cheapest keyboard, but I believe it should be coming in slightly under $300 for the whole kit when it goes on sale. As usual, if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and I'll have more content for you in the future.